Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today's video is a little bit special. It's the STAMPtember collaboration set with Simon Says Stamp. So before we get into the whole card and everything else that we're going to be doing, I just want to say that if you love all things sunflower, if you super love this set, if you're like, I'm totally in love with it, pause the video and go buy it, because the way STAMPtember works is once it's sold out, it's sold out. It's never coming back. It will not be produced again. So if you are absolutely in love with the Be a Sunflower set, go snatch it up. And for super easy access, there will be a link below if you are watching on YouTube that you can click, and that will just bring you right to it so that you can purchase it. There are a lot of people who will put it in their cart and then they keep shopping, and then sometimes it sells out. So just be aware of that. Moving on to the card making, the regular card making, just in case you happen to be watching this after the fact, or you think that, whatever, you have a set that is similar to this, that you want to use this kind of, or make these kinds of cards for, that's fine. We're just going to move right on with the process. So when I first got the stamp set, my first immediate thought was like this field of sunflowers with this big bright blue sky. So that's the first card that we're going to work on. I am stamping on Neenah's Solar White cardstock, and I did end up stamping it twice because I had never inked this stamp before, and so the first time around I didn't really get a great impression. I'm not going to be doing any masking today because I didn't really think it was necessary. I knew I could just kind of leave this lighter halo around the flowers. That would be fine. It would still suit the scene of the card. But if you wanted to get the blue right up against the flowers, I would recommend that you mask them. I used Salty Ocean Distress ink, and then for the darker blue, I used Prize Ribbon, which actually is a new to me color. It's one of the newer Distress ink colors. If you have Blueprint Sketch, that would also work. They're pretty similar. And then I always do my Distress inking twice, just because I feel like that gives me a much better blend. And then, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going to bring that Salty Ocean down a little bit farther and really just intensify the color. For the field part of it, to fill that in, I'm going to be using Mowed Lawn. You could use, I think, like Crushed Olive is much more a fall color per se, or if you wanted something darker, Peeled Paint would also work, but Mowed Lawn is my favorite because it's the brightest green, and that's just what I like. I like the bright colors. So here, again, I'm just not coming up to where the blooms are. I'm leaving that kind of like that white halo, and then I'm going to fill in the rest of the coloring with my Copic markers. In order to have a little bit of a variety in my sunflower field, I am going to use my Y02 and Y19, which is basically Y08. They're very similar colors. And then I'm going to change up my shading colors, which for the more orange sunflowers, I'm going to use a YR04 and a YR09. For a more golden sunflower, I'm going to use a Y24 and an E99. So those were all the markers that I showed you at the beginning of the coloring. Once I have all the petals filled in with the Y02, I'm going to go back in with my darkest color. Normally I don't do this, and if you watch my videos, you know that I usually go lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. But because these petals are so small, I was like, I could get probably decent blending without having to go back over them 2 times. And so it just made the most sense to go to the darker color and then work backwards, because on the last 2 passes, I'm going to be using the same colors. So here I'm really just adding like 1 or 2 little flicks of color at where I want it to be the darkest, so at the base of the petals, or if they happen to be lying underneath another petal. And I'm going to work, like I said, my way, why are words hard, back out to that Y02. I know not everybody is a colorist, which is why I have another card in the same video that I don't do any coloring at all. And you could certainly simplify the coloring for this and still get a really great result. You could do a 2 color blend, and still have a really bold, pretty fall card. If for some reason, when you are shopping for your STAMPtember set, if you missed out on the set and you're watching this later in life, there are a couple of other stamp sets that Honeybee sells that you could recreate this kind of scene with. And so I will link those below as well. One of them, if you want sunflowers, first and foremost, is Loads of Fall. The Loads of Fall is actually like a complimentary set to our big pickup tailgate set. It's meant to like fill the back of the truck, but it has lots of sunflowers in it, and it does have a standalone sunflower as well that you could recreate this look. Oh, I just whacked my microphone, I'm sorry. That you could recreate this look yourself. And then if you were looking for just any kind of field of flowers to do this with, which obviously you could totally do, we have the wildflowers or the bold botanicals. The bold botanicals is a solid set, so that would be more like stamp layering. But the wildflowers, you could certainly create this outline look with. And then if you just love sunflowers, we actually have the sweet sunflowers set, which is larger sunflowers, so it wouldn't necessarily be a field that you would be creating. But if you just love all things sunflowers or all things fall, that might be another set for you to look into. So like I said, I will link those below just in case you happen to be watching after the fact, or if this stamp set sells out. It's hard to predict with STAMPtember what will and won't sell out. So just keep that in mind. Like that there are some other options. I know that a lot of people get very disappointed if the stamp set that they wanted sells out very quickly, but just remember that a lot of times for most companies there are other alternatives. So here my yellow portion is done. I am coloring in the center of my flowers with some browns, leaving the center portion the lightest and then working out to the darkest. For the darkest layer, I am not actually filling it in solid. I'm doing a bunch of little dots just to add in that darkest color and get some sort of shading without completely overpowering the whole middle. And then I will work back out to my lightest color like I usually do. For the leaves, I'm using my usual yellow-green combination, which is a YG03, a YG17, and a YG67. If I was coloring them without any distress ink, I would also add in a YG01. But here in this particular case, you wouldn't even be able to see it. So there was no point in adding it. But this is just like a really good, simple layout. I think flowers are super versatile and you can use them for so many things. The sentiments that are in this set are adorable. So 2 of the ones that I used were Shine Like a Sunflower and In a World Full of Roses Be a Sunflower. But then they also have like Hello Beautiful, Hello Sunshine, Stand Close to People Who Feel Like Sunshine, and Sending You a Little Bit of Sunshine, which I think all work really well with the whole sunflower vibe. As much as I love summer, it is nice to kind of be getting into a different kind of color palette. These are still pretty bright colors because that's just what I have a tendency to lean towards. But it is nice to just kind of be mixing up the images and things. And every year, like I do love the sunflowers because I love flowers in general. So I typically make 1 or 2 cards that have the sunflowers in them. But yeah, I think it's a super cute set. Anywho, so back to the coloring. I am just adding a little bit of shading. I'm not going totally crazy because I knew I was trying to fit like 2 cards in one video, which is challenging for me because I typically do all the masking and everything else with, in my scene building, but fortunately this one doesn't even need it. I did add a little bit of detail as far as the white dots to the center of my sunflowers. I just think it gives them a little bit more interest. And then the last thing that I'm going to do to them, oh, I'm going to do my sentiment first. The last thing that I'm going to do after that is add a little bit of clear Wink of Stella for the shimmer, just because I like shimmer. That's obviously optional, but I don't know why you would opt out of it, because it's wonderful. Glitter is wonderful. So this is the Shine Like a Sunflower sentiment that I chose for this one, and I just kind of tucked it down in there real close to my flowers and let that kind of blue sky just shine out there. And then that's the whole first card. Now, this was like I said, my first thought when I got the stamp set. And I think that all of us, when we're buying stamp sets, have that, oh, I could use it for this. And that's like the first main idea that you have. I find that I have to kind of get that one out of my system before I can really move on to being creative with it. And so for this one, which again, you could use for any similar stamp set that you have, or any really floral stamp set that you have, this is a pretty versatile technique. So here I'm going to be doing the same thing as far as putting the stamp set on the bottom edge of my card, but I am not going to be coloring it. So I've chose some orange cardstock, which if you guys watched my videos recently, you heard me say that I was not team purple, I was team orange. And that is because even though I don't really create necessarily too much with either one of them, the purple probably gets a little bit more use on my channel. Orange is blue's complement, and blue is my boyfriend. So here, what I'm doing is I'm going to do some embossing. I kind of forgot to put my sentiment on there the first time around, so you saw me go back and do that. But now that I have everything lined up, I am going to use my Versamark to stamp on, after I treated it with my anti-static tool, to stamp on this orange. And it's like a medium orange. It's not super dark or super light. It is actually, let me look, I think it's Circus Peanuts. Yeah, it is. It's Circus Peanuts from Basil. And I'm going to stamp this down using my Versamark. I did have to stand up every time I stamped this just because it has such a intricate center. I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any of those. And then I'm going to be heat embossing this in gold. You could certainly do it in white and it would give you a very similar effect. But there is just something about fall that I really love the gold metallic with it. I'll have another video coming up super soon that is the same thing, where I've used some gold in it just because I really like it with the deeper, richer fall colors. So in heating this up, I use the gold embossing powder from Hero Arts. I always preheat my gun just so that way it minimizes the warping on my paper, especially with something like this where you're going to be doing a large majority of embossing on a portion of your card. And there's just something, I mean, it doesn't matter how many times I do it, especially with metallic embossing powders. It's like super magical to watch it melt and turn into this super shiny metallic imprint. I love it. So now that this is done, there you can kind of see the gold. I know it's hard to see, and that's why I included in the video at the beginning and at the end. Again, I will include kind of a close-up of the embossing at an angle in which it's much easier to see. So this, like I said, you can totally do this with so many different cards. It doesn't have to be this stamp set or this type of stamp set. But I'm going to be doing some ombre inking. So I started with fossilized amber, and I'm not completely covering the cardstock. I'm just going up to where the sentiment is. And then I'm going to start to create a little bit of contrast and interest with my color scheme. So from the fossilized amber, I went to carved pumpkin. And then the last color I'm going to use is rusty hinge. Rusty hinge is such a fall color to me. It's like this really pretty burnt orange. But you could do this on any color cardstock with any color inks that you like for the ombre look. and get just a really super pretty result, especially since we're using a metallic embossing powder that really kind of elevates the card. So once this is done, I'm going to go back in, because I told you before, I feel like I always get a better blend if I go over it twice. So that's what I'm doing there. And then I am very lightly, this baby wipe is not a new baby wipe. Okay, it's been out for a little while. And I'm just kind of going to buff over that embossing to make sure that it's all cleaned up and shiny. And then in order to, you could leave it super clean, guys. I'm not going to pretend like you can't, okay? But I just thought it would be a little bit more interesting for the background to have some gold spatters. But I didn't want it to be crazy up at the top where the sentiment is. So I have gold perfect pearls. I am mixing that with water so I can splatter it. In the beginning, I didn't pull out enough pigment. And you can typically tell when you're looking at it, like if it looks more watered down, that you probably need to add a little bit more pigment. And this stuff goes a long way. So like, don't feel like if you scoop out, you know, whatever, you're not going to use too much of it. I have had the same containers of perfect pearls for years and years. And I use it like on every card. So I'm also going to use myself a little blocker here to kind of protect that sentiment when I'm initially putting it down. And then once the majority of it has come off of my brush, I will move that and get just a little bit of spatter up by where the sentiment is. And then that's it. This is the 2 cards. So just some ideas that you can use for this particular stamp set. Like I said, if you love it, head over to Simon and grab it, because once it's gone, it's gone. And then, yeah, that's it. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that you found some things to be inspired by, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.